Hello and welcome back. If you're here for the first time, thank you for tuning in. So today I'm here with a Vanity Fair exclusive interview with creator Dave Filoni and stars Rosario Dawson, Hayden Christensen, and Natasha Bordizzo. So let's get straight into this. I'm going to read you excerpts from the Vanity Fair article and the standouts to me. So the article says, Dave Filoni has a new mission in the Star Wars universe after guiding Rosario Dawson's force-wielding hero to distant celestial realms. The writer, producer, director who started out working alongside George Lucas on the animated Clone Wars show nearly 2 decades ago has ascended to a new position at Lucasfilm, one that will give him input into all the galactic storytelling moving forward. Dave Filoni told Vanity Fair, quote, "Now I'm what's called Chief Creative Officer of Lucasfilm," end quote. This places him in the developmental process much earlier and in a much more expansive capacity than his previous advisory duties, end quote. He went on to say, quote, "In the past, in a lot of projects, I would be brought into it. I would see it after it had already developed a good ways," end quote. Filoni will now work more directly with Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy and alongside Carrie Beck, a veteran producer turned head of development, to originate and shepherd the next generation of Star Wars shows and movies. After spending many years involved in the creation of Star Wars animation, including the Rebels show, he became increasingly involved in live action as a producer with Jon Favreau on The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. Quote, "In this new role, it's opened up to basically everything that's going on. When we're planning the future of what we're doing now, I'm involved at the inception phase," end quote, said Filoni. The news comes a little over a month after the conclusion of Dave Filoni's show that explored how Dawson's Jedi grappled with her legacy of being trained by Anakin Skywalker, the mentor who became the galactic tyrant Darth Vader. Due to the long-running Hollywood strikes, neither Filoni nor Dawson were able to speak about the show when it debuted. In a Vanity Fair exclusive, both of them are now free to discuss the changes the show brought to the broader Star Wars narrative, both on screen and behind the scenes. Hayden Christensen, who returned to play Anakin Skywalker, also spoke about reprising his role from the prequel films and what the show says about Darth Vader and about how he reckons with his own terrible history in the galactic afterlife. And Natasha Bordizzo, who plays Sabine Wren, the Mandalorian troublemaker who becomes the new Jedi trainee, addressed the way that the show opened up the world to a new generation of fans by simultaneously embracing tradition and trying to forge new storylines. Bordizzo said, quote, "You just learn a lot from Dave in general, I think. I know that he's traditional in the sense of how he learned so much from George. He has these pillars of storytelling that are so dear to him, and then everything else can be untraditional," end quote. So Filoni said, quote, "I'm not telling people what to do, but I do feel I'm trying to help them tell the best story that they want to tell. I need to be a help across the galaxy here, like a part of a Jedi council almost," end quote. He described his responsibilities as understanding the intent of the filmmakers and being a resource to them, based on his mentorship under Lucas himself and his years spent steering the Clone Wars, Rebels, and Ahsoka. And Dave said, quote, "Literally hours now of Star Wars storytelling I have done," end quote. He said this before pausing to rethink his syntax, saying, quote, "See, I even phrased that like Yoda," end quote. So at a Star Wars Celebration fan convention this past spring, A number of new projects were announced by Kennedy, including a feature film from Filoni that would help bridge the decade-long gap between The Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, a space that The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka are already busy filling. Okay, so that's an interesting note there. I'll add my thoughts on that later. The article goes on to say, quote, Filoni will continue developing his film as well as exploring a possible second season of Ahsoka while serving in his new position. So Dave said this, quote, to truly help filmmakers, it was really important for me to experience it firsthand. I can also lend a perspective on the challenges that these stories will present. I feel more capable of actually being helpful outside of just saying, quote, well, Jedi are this and Sith are like this, end quote. All of the titles from Star Wars Celebration are still on the books, Lucasfilm officials say, including a historical epic about the early origins of the Force from Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny filmmaker James Mangold. And a story revisiting Daisy Ridley's Rey from director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. So they also talk about upcoming projects set in the High Republic era, and they've also announced the Skeleton Crew show. That's a show about a group of lost young space travelers set some time after the Empire's defeat in Return of the Jedi. Put a pin in that. I will get back to that. I have some thoughts on that as well. So the article goes on to say that Kathleen Kennedy, the president of Lucasfilm, will continue leading the overall company, and Beck's role will involve recruiting other storytellers into the Star Wars fold, while Filoni weighs in on a narrative level. So they talk about Darth Vader's legacy, and they say although Star Wars has literally thousands of characters populating its various stories, the single greatest touchstone remains Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader. Two sides of the same individual, one honorable, the other not so much. Ahsoka was distinctive among other Star Wars projects for delving into what it is like for denizens of the galaxy to emerge from that darkness. So, as we know, Tano was his Padawan apprentice. Just as Luke Skywalker wondered about how much of his own nature was inherited from his father, she too questions in the series whether it's possible to trust, let alone pass on, everything she learned from the same man. So Dawson says this of that, quote, she has a very particular idea of him, the Jedi, and who she was in all of that for a very long time until that image was shattered. Quote, the point we graduate to here is, yeah, he did some terrible things. And he also did some really great things. And it's always up to you how you choose the direction. She can look back at her own life. She's gone through some hardships that could have been the moment that turned her dark. She didn't go there, so I think she's starting to trust herself, end quote. The series continues an arc from the animated Rebels show, set at the beginning of the Galactic Uprising, when Vader was at full power as an Imperial enforcer, and she came face to mask with her former mentor. Quote, while I had introduced in Rebels the idea that she came to understand that Anakin had become Darth Vader, I never really dealt with the fallout from that, end quote, Dave Filoni said. He went on to say, quote, how does that affect somebody when a person they really admire and looked up to turned out not to be the person they thought they were? Are we all just capable of a fall from grace? And what is forgiveness? What shape does that look like? Did I take the good parts of this person with me as well as the bad? Or am I just the good? I thought there were a lot of interesting challenges for her, end quote. The article goes on to talk about Dawson's character and how she was defeated and nearly ended in a battle by fallen Jedi turned mercenary named Baylan, played by the late Ray Stevenson, who casts her off a cliff into a raging sea, transporting her to the liminal space known in Star Wars lore as the World Between Worlds. where Anakin helps guide her through the conflict roiling inside of her. Dawson said, quote, "Maybe he is also a warning of what can still happen, but that's still significant in a positive way if you want it to be," end quote. So they talk about how the character has grown up with fans who first encountered her when they were children, some of them when watching the animated show in the late 2000s. Rosario says, quote, "We were able to take a little bit more time to go, quote, what does this feel like? What does this mean? And explore the choices that came from that kind of reckoning," end quote. She went on to say, quote, "We've seen that when she decided to leave the Jedi. We saw that when she walked away from Anakin. And there have been pivotal moments. This felt like a seminal moment again. This is a different rite of passage," end quote. So the article here delves into Hayden's return as Anakin, in which the show opened up the door for Christensen to return as Anakin Skywalker, reprising the role of a brash young Jedi he first performed in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. The actor previously came back as the scarred and broken Vader in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, but this time they offered him a chance to revisit the character post-redemption. Hayden said he played it with a deliberate sense of uncertainty. Is this really him, or is he a figment from her troubled mind? So Hayden said this, quote, "That's the beauty of how the episode is constructed, in my opinion. Inevitably, the audience has to question what it is they are watching. Is this really the world between worlds? What is the world between worlds? Is this actually the spirit of Anakin Skywalker, or is this all in her subconscious? And we're just going down the yellow brick road as she's drowning and fighting for her life." I think that the episode provides a few really good clues, but it doesn't spell it out for you, end quote. Dave Filoni prefers to leave the mystery open to interpretation, but he defers to Lucas as the definitive storyteller on Vader. For him, this show was about how Ahsoka's character dealt with her past, rather than continuing the cautionary tale of Anakin Skywalker as a Force ghost. So Dave said this, quote, "My feeling about Anakin is that George resolved everything about him. I don't think I have anything to do there. I'm not trying to add anything new to that. Everything Anakin's involved with is about her. It's about her point of view on Anakin. It's about what Anakin taught her. He is there in more of an Obi-Wan role that we saw in the old movies," end quote. So they say in her visions, flashes of Vader lurch out. Or maybe that's just her imagination. There's also an interpretation that Anakin intervenes to save her life, rescuing his old apprentice from her fall into the ocean. Hayden said, quote, "There's a lot there to unpack. I was just getting to play a version of this character that I hadn't before, and that was the all-knowing, all-powerful Jedi Master who could wield both sides of the Force, light and dark, at will, and maybe has the power to save Ahsoka's life," which is also very interesting because that's the power he was trying to achieve when he pledged himself to the dark side, end quote. In the final shot of the show, the Force ghost of Anakin quietly watches Ahsoka and Sabine from afar as she speaks with her Force-sensitive trainee. Like planets in a solar system aligning, the one shot gives viewers a perspective of the 3 generations of Jedi. Filoni said, quote, "Anakin? Of course, he's there with her. He's always been there with her, but she just couldn't see it. She couldn't feel it. She didn't know how. She had isolated herself and made herself alone because she was afraid. He has done a great deal to alleviate that fear in her. And so, there's a moment. I think he's proud of her in the end. He sees that she's going to be a better mentor." I debate Force ghosts with people all the time. To me, what they are mainly is inspiration. You have people in your life that I'm sure have inspired you, and you feel that all the time. You feel that when you need it, end quote. So Bordizzo said, quote, "I was geeking out at that scene. We were on a stage outside that was not the volume for that scene. We shot it basically exactly as it is. He was standing there for real. It somehow makes it feel even more epic to bring those original characters into the fold of our story, end quote. Now, there are multiple of generations of Star Wars fans who grew up with it, passing it on to their own children, or in some cases, grandkids. History and legacy are natural themes to explore. Natasha said, quote, "But the line of descendants is full of non-traditional Jedi, and then Jedi who have turned. So it's not necessarily a very steady, solid line to be trusted," end quote. Sabine has no blood relationship with Anakin, but she has a certain recklessness in common with him, which makes her mentor, Ahsoka, more than uneasy. Natasha said, quote, "Part of the reason Ahsoka originally had issues trusting Sabine was because I reminded her so much of her master in some ways, in terms of the internal struggle I was going through," end quote. So to her, this is another way for Star Wars stories to resonate with fans by speaking to real-world experiences within the context of a space fantasy. Sabine was a teenager in Rebels, but by the time of Ahsoka, she's no kid anymore. Even she hasn't quite perfected what's known in both our world and the galaxy far, far away as, quote, adulting. Bordizzo said, quote, "We're the same age actually, Sabine and I, when we shot it, and everything I was going through in life at that age, I wanted to channel it. She wasn't a teenager anymore, but she's still someone who needs guidance. Where I was at in life was very parallel to her. I was just at a big crossroads. Your late 20s can be kind of rough. You're getting past a lot of stuff that used to interest you and moving into a new chapter. The Force and Sabine trying to achieve the use of it was such a metaphor for me of trying to achieve that groundedness in real life. It just made me laugh," end quote. She went on to say, quote, "A lot of time I would read the episodes and be like, I can relate to that. Obviously, I'm not trying to achieve the Force, but it's all related," end quote. So she talks about, Sabine, her character, being stubborn with walls up, and she said that she hoped that that can evolve. So back to Dave, who feels that he has to expand the Star Wars universe in order to justify their absence and add an extra large obstacle to their eventual recovery. Oh, that's a very interesting point. So I guess that's why he's stranded them out there, and a great point. He went on to say, quote, "There's too many starships, there's too many people traveling. You get a signal out, and I think he could have found them if they wanted to be found. I had to really throw them far afield," end quote. Wow, once again, fascinating. Share your thoughts on that. Now we know that was in his creative choices behind making sure that Ahsoka and Sabine were left off in the other galaxy. Fascinating. So Lucas himself laid the foundation for the solution, which Filoni found tucked away in one of the prequel films. "I think it's Attack of the Clones," he said. Quote, "If you look, there's an image of a galaxy, and then there are actually these smaller galaxies near it. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting," end quote. By vaulting Bridger and Thrawn into an entirely different galaxy, he created an opportunity to explore an ancient way for opening those gateways. Oh wow, so he said that he wants to also perhaps clear the way for more storytellers to explore those new realms themselves. So he said this, quote, "You know me, I plan for a long game, I really do, and that encompasses a lot more than it used to, as I help other people as well," end quote. So expect this broader universe to be a factor in any future season of Ahsoka or that feature film he is developing. He went on to say, quote, "I'm setting up what seems to be a larger conflict with the Imperial Remnant. That conflict can't just mirror what we've seen before. It has to take on a different shape. It just can't be the Empire versus what looks like the Rebellion or even the Republic. It has to be visually different," end quote. Hats off to Dave for that. I think we want to see more explored, and we want to have it have that unique DNA that George Lucas has in Star Wars, because we know he wanted to push the limits every time he made anything, not only with the storytelling but visually as well, so we welcome that. So they talked about the untimely passing of Ray Stevenson after he finished shooting his role as Baylan, and it was an emotional void for his colleagues but also a narrative one for his character. So the story ended up with the morally gray, in quotes, former Jedi standing on the ruins of a mountain-sized sculpture. So a lot of you knew about those supernatural beings that first appeared in that particularly fantastical episode of the Clone Wars. Dave said, quote, "You've got to be careful with that. I know it's a very specific group of people that would even know what those statues are, but I thought it was an exciting image and it does give you a shape of what Baylan is after," end quote. So to Filoni, Baylan is a seeker, someone wrestling with the memory of what he was taught and the subsequent delusion that has set in. Dave said, quote, "He is a person that survived the Clone Wars, that was trained in the waxing, waning days of the Jedi Knights, just as Anakin. He saw his order, his way of life, fall apart, and he's basically deemed it a failure. That way did not work. It's not something worth resurrecting, which is why he told his apprentice Shin, quote, 'I didn't teach you to be a Jedi, I taught you to be something more,' end quote. Something more, in quotes, would seem to be rooted in what he is after. He went on to say he tried to take those teachings he learned as a young person and create his own way of being. And he looked at the cycle of things and said, quote, 'Enough with this. If I have this power, I should wield it. I should be the one making decisions,' which a lot of people with power decide that's the way to go. He's also very certain that what he's doing is the right thing," end quote. So he talks about a very interesting back and forth with Ray Stevenson. And the article says, while Filoni isn't yet sure of what will become of Baylan in Stevenson's absence, he does acknowledge that the character's journey is not complete. Dave said, quote, "Obviously there is a story there. We are in a wait-and-see pattern at this point. But I'm glad the conversation is about Ray and how great he was. I used to have many debates with him and say, quote, 'Ray, you are the villain here.' And he'd be like, 'I don't think so.' I was like, 'I know you don't think so, but you are. And I love you're playing it like you're not,' which is exactly the way Baylan thinks," end quote. The article talks about how the character Baylan has become a standout, a fan favorite, and Filoni says that he would have been over the moon. And he said the big regret is that he didn't get to experience that. But he said he was glad that he was at Celebration and he did get to see a taste from the fans. So they talk about what's next. So Dawson said, quote, "I mean, they've not said anything officially, but I remember when we were at Star Wars Celebration in London that they were like, 'We're giving Dave a movie,' end quote." So she felt that that meant they were probably going to get a second season. They talk also about the clear future of Star Wars is moving beyond Vader and the scope of the originals, but is still powered by an emotion generated with them. And Dawson said, quote, "We had so many moments of literal tears," end quote. She cited one in particular, the day Darth Vader was on set for a flashback sequence. Quote, "I have a video of some of us with the crew just watching when Vader walked up. We just wanted to be on the edge, just off the camera, so we could watch him unencumbered with our own eyes and just take it in. Are we really seeing what we're seeing right now? This is unbelievable," end quote. So that's how the article ends on such a high, and congratulations first and foremost to Dave Filoni on his promotion, and I think he is in a great role as Chief Creative Officer. He will be right there, as he said, at the inception of their projects. Now, they did talk about a couple of points here that I wanted to discuss. Firstly, saying they wanted to have a movie which would connect all they're doing to the sequel trilogy. Now, we all have to be honest with each other. I think it's time for Disney to be honest with themselves. When you look at the first of the sequels, how it was received to the way it just kind of dwindled off, it would not make sense to keep throwing good money after bad. If the fans did not like how everything ended off, I don't think they should go there. And they have opened up this whole new avenue through the world between worlds. And as much as we love elements in the sequels, we have to acknowledge that there was no cohesive vision for all the three films. And we know that by how they did away with the big bad in the second film, and then somehow Palpatine returned. It wasn't good. And, you know, the actors themselves were dissatisfied. And also remember that George Lucas had written his own treatment for the sequels that was largely ignored by the studio. So I think this is a chance for them to get it right. Because if the fan base for which you've made a certain product are giving you feedback that they did not like what they got, then it's time for them to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to work their way back to that place where everyone was, happy with what they were getting. So what do you think about them still charting a path through all the movies and films towards the sequel trilogy, even while they know the reception that they had was not what they wanted? Let me know what you think about that, because I think they should steer away from that. The fans did not respond to that, so you cannot continue to go in that direction. There is no retooling it because they did not have a cohesive story plot to begin with. So share your thoughts on that in the comment section. I would like them to personally just have a separate timeline where the sequel trilogy can exist, and then find a way to work a new sequel trilogy into the main Star Wars universe. And who knows, and if there are elements in what they did in the sequels that they want to bring over, then they should do that, but they should not continue on like this big train hurtling full steam ahead. My honest opinion, they should really not continue to go down this path, because if they truly are going to be stubborn and go down that same path, it's going to be once again like Padme telling Anakin that they're going down a path that we cannot follow. So I think they should sit down with Dave and be honest with themselves, because once they confront what happened to the sequels in honesty, then they can truly move forward. So my second point is the High Republic books. There initially was a lot of hype for those books, but according to what I've seen, I don't think they have a massive fan base. So they also talked about having shows revolving around the High Republic. There are a lot of concerns about that, because according to what I have seen and read up on, that the fan base for that particular storytelling is it's not as huge as you would want it to be. So once again, it goes back to, where do they want to go overall? Do they want to make these stories where the narrative is not resonating with the public and they just want to continue forging down that path, or do they want to make profits? Because at the end of the day, this is a business and they cannot feed their customers what they're cooking in the kitchen, right? So if the books and the comics of that era are not doing well, yes, they've already made one show, but they should not continue. They should really take a second look on that and not continue to plow down a path which has diminishing returns. So share your thoughts on that as well. I would like them just to have great stories where, as I said, Filoni will be weighing in on a narrative level. Let's bring it back to what we had in the Clone Wars, where it was just all about Star Wars, a galaxy far, far away. Make it fantastical with amazing storytelling, with one cohesive, planned out path for what they're gonna do. Because as they said, this is a huge galaxy, and yes, we cannot continue to tell the same stories, but we have to tell new stories well. So I hope that they also have not only Dave weighing in, but also make time to touch base with George Lucas as well, because he truly got it. We can talk about his execution on a couple of things in the prequels, but all in all, we know he had a single storyline that he had planned out and he was working his way towards it. So it would be amazing to have him as well give direction to Dave, to all the other creatives that will be coming in. I think that will be amazing. So share your thoughts on this news. I'm so happy to have Hayden here as well, just saying that he had a chance to play Anakin as he has never done before. I hope we get to see so much more from him. And I've always said this, we need a Vader show, just where we can follow his story and we can have flashbacks because we want more. We can have one scene where we have Obi-Wan, Anakin, Ahsoka, and some of the Jedi that we came to know and love from the Clone Wars. animated show. Just a flashback of that. Oh my gosh, I want more. The more I'm saying this, the more I just want Clone Wars in live action. So I'm gonna just pause right there and say all that to say that I truly do hope that they move forward in a way that stories are well planned out and are compelling and are received positively by the fans. I have high hopes right now. I think that Disney and Star Wars and Lucasfilm and all of them are starting to listen to the fans. And now that Dave Filoni has been given this new position, he will be more involved in a foundational level of storytelling that will be moving forward. I think that is just so amazing. It helps with them having, one story, and they will be able to tell these epics across so many time periods in Star Wars. And also I've got to add here, we all loved the Old Republic, and I would like to see something from that era as well. It's time for Star Wars to listen to the fans. If we are telling you we want something, please do it. Don't force feed us what we do not want. Yes, be creative, have your own stories, but if it's not worked in the past, I just hope they listen to the fans. So I'm excited. Share your thoughts on this in the comment section below. And thank you all for watching. As always, before we log off, a very special thank you to all who support this channel financially, to all my Patreon, PayPal, and membership supporters. Allow me here to thank a couple of you by name. A very special thank you to you, Diane Hawkins. I appreciate you for your engagement and love on this channel throughout the years. I love you and appreciate you. Thank you as well to you, Helene Gruen. I appreciate you for your long time support for my work here. It means so much, and you mean so much to me. You are so generous. God bless you. Thank you as well to you, Patricia Crenshaw. I do appreciate you, and God bless you for your tremendous support for my work throughout the years and your encouragement. I love you. Once again, thank you to all who support this channel. Share your thoughts on all of these Star Wars updates in the comment section below and your thoughts on them moving forward. I would love to know that. If you liked this one, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Click that subscribe button. It truly does help out the channel. And if you want to, follow on Twitter for more informal posts. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next one. Have a blessed one.